These are the headlines we're following at this hour. The Israeli military says Hamas used weapons made by North Korea and Iran during its October 7th attack. Meanwhile, Tehran says it can play a mediating role in the release of hostages held by Hamas if Israel can release Palestinian prisoners in exchange. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with China's top diplomat Wang in Washington. Blinken said he looks forward to constructive conversations. Wang noted that the two countries have disagreements but called for more dialogue, citing common interests and common challenges. South Korea is carrying out vaccinations for all cattle against the viral lumpy skin disease, as more than 40 farms are affected so far, raising concerns over milk supply disruptions. Good afternoon. We start with the latest developments in Gaza. The Israeli military says Hamas used weapons made by North Korea and Iran during its October 7th attack. Meanwhile, Tehran says it can play a mediating role in the release of hostages held by Hamas if Israel can release Palestinian prisoners in exchange. Lee Seung-jae has more.
The Israeli military says North Korean and Iranian weapons, which included mines, rocket-propelled grenades, and drones, were used by Hamas during its attack on Israel on October 7th. An Iranian mortar launcher and a North Korean-made grenade launcher were part of the haul of weapons recovered, with an official saying a total of 20% of all weapons used by Hamas during the attacks were from North Korea and Iran. Iran's foreign minister told the United Nations on Thursday that Tehran is ready to play a role in mediating talks to release Israeli hostages from Hamas, along with Qatar and Turkey. However, he said in order for such negotiations to take place, Israel must be prepared to release 6,000 Palestinians held in its prisons. Meanwhile, according to Russian media outlet TASS, a delegation from Hamas visited Moscow on Thursday for talks on the release of hostages, including Russian citizens that the militant group is currently holding in Gaza. The Kremlin said Iran's deputy foreign minister is in Moscow to hold talks with Russian officials to discuss the ongoing conflict and find ways to stabilize the situation. Israel slammed the visit by the Hamas delegation, saying that Russia should expel them from their country, while criticizing Russia for inviting them. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with China's top diplomat Wang in Washington. Blinken said he looks forward to constructive conversations. Wang noted that the two countries have disagreements but called for more dialogue, citing common interests and challenges. Choi Min-jung reports.
Top diplomats of the United States and China kicked off a long-anticipated discussion in Washington on Thursday. Speaking briefly before sitting down for talks, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken welcomed his Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi.
I very much look forward to constructive conversations over the next 2 days.
Wang said Washington and Beijing have disagreements, but at the same time share important common interests and challenges that they need to resolve together, comments that Blinken said he agreed with.
Not only should it be resumed, the dialogue should be in-depth and comprehensive so that with dialogue we can increase understanding, reduce misunderstanding and misjudgments.
Wang's three-day visit follows a flurry of diplomatic engagements between the countries aimed at easing bilateral tensions. The current trip is primarily aimed at preparing a possible summit between Joe Biden and Xi Jinping in November on the sidelines of an Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Leaders meeting in San Francisco. And amid ongoing conflict, it's anticipated that the U.S. will use Wang's trip to urge China to play a constructive role in wars between Israel and Hamas, as well as Russia and Ukraine. The U.S. State Department previously hinted that North Korea issues would also be on the agenda of the meetings. China's top diplomat on Friday is set to meet with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, and it's highly likely he'll speak with President Biden as well. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Former Chinese Premier Li Keqiang has died at the age of 68. According to China's state broadcaster CCTV on Friday, Li died of sudden heart attack in Shanghai. Li, who served as Premier of the People's Republic of China from 2013 to 2023, was the second most powerful official in the ruling Chinese Communist Party until he was replaced by Li Keqiang in March this year. The U.S. economy grew by nearly 5% in the third quarter, surpassing expectations despite high inflation and soaring interest rates. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen expressed confidence in the economy's strength, countering concerns about rising deficits and an economic recession. Shin Se-byuk reports.
The U.S. economy grew 4.9% in the third quarter. The figure released by the Commerce Department on Thursday marked the highest increase in nearly 2 years since the 7% growth recorded in the fourth quarter of 2021. Notably, this surpassed both the previous quarter's 2.1% and economists' expectations of 4.3%, despite the country's interest rates reaching their highest level in 22 years. Consumer spending played a key role. It was up 4%, the fastest pace since the last quarter of 2021, demonstrating the country's resilience in the face of challenges such as high inflation and soaring interest rates. Other indicators, inventories, investment, and government spending also posted strong growth. In a TV interview on Thursday, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen acknowledged that while the growth rate is likely to slow, she labeled it as a good, strong number. Yellen also expressed confidence in the U.S. economy's ability to achieve a soft landing. Meanwhile, as for the significant increase in long-term bond yields, Yellen attributed this to confidence in the U.S. economy, which has led to expectations of higher interest rates for a longer period. The interest rate on the 10-year U.S. Treasury bond hit 5% early this week, the highest since 2007. This came as the U.S. last week reported a $1.7 trillion federal budget deficit for the fiscal year 2023. The 10-year Treasury yield, a barometer of investor confidence, is widely considered one of the safest investments as it carries the full backing of the U.S. government. There have been suggestions that higher bond yields came as a result of worries about rising U.S. deficits and an economic recession. Despite concerns, Yellen dismissed suggestions of rising U.S. deficits and a potential economic recession and emphasized the possibility of longer-term yields decreasing. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
The European Central Bank has decided to keep interest rates steady after an unprecedented series of rate hikes. The ECB Governing Council announced on Thursday its decision to leave the key interest rate unchanged at 4.5%. This has brought to an end to 10 consecutive hikes that began in July 2022. The decision was largely driven by the annual rate of inflation in the Eurozone, more than halving from its peak around a year earlier, and the regional economy showing signs of weakened growth. The rate increase pause also comes ahead of the U.S. Federal Reserve and the Bank of England meeting next week. It's been nearly 3 weeks since the Israel-Hamas war began, and there are rising concerns over increased volatility in oil prices. How much of an impact will it bring to the world depending on different scenarios of the world war? Our Shin Young talked to experts.
Since the beginning of the Israel-Hamas conflict, all eyes have been on global oil prices, which can push up inflation both at home and abroad. Global oil prices jumped more than 4% on the third day of the Israel-Hamas conflict, which was the biggest one-day gain since April 3rd. However, even though oil prices rebounded as of Wednesday after prices fell on Tuesday for the third straight session, fluctuations have been less significant for the past few days. This came amid diplomatic efforts from a number of countries to release hostages. Also, Israel has not yet launched a ground invasion due to international pressure, alleviating concerns about disruptions in oil supply. But it's too early to predict the actual economic impact, as it's uncertain how the conflict will unfold. Bloomberg Economics estimates that if the conflict extends to a war between Israel and Iran, it could push oil prices to $150 a barrel and drop global growth to 1.7%. This is because of Iran's proximity to the Strait of Hormuz, a vital oil trading route.
If Iran disrupts oil tankers passing through the Strait of Hormuz, or even blocks the strait, it could significantly impact global oil prices. This is because about 30% of the volume of the world's total oil consumption passes through that route.
Meanwhile, unlike the Ukraine war, in the case of the Israel-Palestine conflict, the region's contribution to global raw material production is not substantial. According to a report from the Korea International Trade Association, Israel and Palestine each account for less than 0.4% of South Korea's overall trade, meaning the effect is expected to be insignificant. However, the author of the report said it's necessary to diversify the supply chain of certain items.
South Korea heavily depends on Israel for key items including bromine and airborne radar for aircraft. With an import dependency exceeding 90% for these items, a prolonged Israel-Hamas conflict could pose challenges for South Korea. Therefore, it is crucial to diversify the supply chain to secure alternative suppliers.
He added that a prolonged war could potentially disrupt the supply chains in these advanced industries, as Israel is a hub for this sector, where there are R&D centers and sales offices of South Korean firms like Samsung and SK Hynix. 신나영, 아리랑 뉴스.
South Korea will start to gradually increase the medical school admissions quota in 2025 in order to tackle doctor shortages in areas outside the capital as well as in essential areas of medicine. Health Minister Cho Kyu-hong said Thursday that the government will push ahead with its planned increase, starting with schools that can physically handle more students. Schools that can't will follow the measure from 2026. The government aims to increase the quotas for the existing medical schools while reviewing the plan to open new schools in areas outside of Seoul. The quota has been frozen at a little over 3,000 since 2006. And amid rising criticism from doctors, the government will continue talks to improve their working conditions. South Korea is carrying out vaccinations for all cattle against the viral lumpy skin disease, as more than 40 farms are affected so far, raising concerns over milk supply disruptions. Ian Hee reports.
Viral lumpy skin disease is spreading in South Korea, with the number of farms found to have confirmed cases on the rise. The outbreak was first discovered in Chungcheongnam-do province on October 20th, and since then more at other farms in the province as well as in neighboring Chungcheongbuk-do province, Gyeonggi-do, Jeollabuk-do, and Gangwon-do provinces, and Incheon. This has led to the culling of over 2,000 cattle. As part of the response, authorities have announced the introduction of an additional 4 million doses of the vaccine by the end of this month, and that all cattle in the country will be vaccinated by early November. The Central Disaster Management Headquarters is currently carrying out vaccinations, focusing on farms close to where outbreaks occurred, using the 540,000 doses of pre-secured vaccine. This farm in Gyeonggi-do province is vaccinating all 104 cattle in its herd.
The vaccination of all cattle on the farm has been completed according to the government's manual, and we are keeping strict vehicle control measures to prevent the spread of the disease. Also, I'm trying my best to control parasites, since the virus is transmitted by blood-sucking insects. When feeding the animals in the morning and evening, I am spending more time observing the cattle to check for symptoms.
Local governments are actively promoting disease preventive measures, including the operation of disinfection facilities, as well as pest control measures, as lumpy skin disease is transmitted by blood-feeding insects. The mortality rate is under 10%, and symptoms include skin nodules and lower milk production. While the disease does not pose a threat to humans in any way, farm owners are concerned.
I believe that it is most important for individual farm owners to pay careful attention to prevent the disease from spreading. I am seriously concerned about the lumpy skin disease spreading to my farm and leading to a culling of all the cattle.
The Central Disaster Management Headquarters has placed restrictions on the movement of cattle on farms in regions neighboring areas where lumpy skin disease has been found until vaccination is complete. Authorities say, considering the period required for antibodies to form, the next 3 weeks are crucial. Ian Hee, Arirang News.
South Korean men's national football team has moved up 2 spots in the latest FIFA rankings to 24th in the world. That's according to the latest FIFA ranking released on Thursday. It is South Korea's second consecutive jump after the team also jumped 2 places in July. The latest ranking comes as the Tag Warriors beat Tunisia 4-0 and Vietnam 6-0 this month. Since Jurgen Klinsmann took over the national team in March, South Korea has had 3 wins, 3 draws, and 2 losses. Among Asian countries, Japan ranked highest in 18th position. 17 will be the first K-pop artist to make a speech during UNESCO Youth Forum. Management company Pledges Entertainment announced on Friday that 17 has been assigned their own full 1-hour session at the Paris headquarters from 7 p.m. local time on November 14th, during which they will both give a speech, then perform. No K-pop artist has ever been given an entire session of their own at a high-profile UNESCO event before. 17's speech will focus on the message that education and solidarity among young people can change the future. The UNESCO Youth Forum is held every 2 years alongside the UNESCO General Conference, providing a platform for young representatives from around the world. A South Korean research team has developed a robotic can that can determine the size, firmness, and freshness of fruits like tomatoes. Jung Eun-ju has a story.
A tool resembling a hand called the gripper holds a tomato, then carefully lifts and moves it to another location without causing any damage. The gripper instantly measures the size, shape, and firmness of the tomato when holding it.
By finely adjusting the air gap between the sensing material and the electrode, the gripper accurately determines an object's firmness by simultaneously detecting the pressure applied to the object and the gripper's bending degree.
This intelligent gripper accurately distinguished 11 varieties of tomatoes with different sizes and properties, achieving a 98.78% accuracy rate. This means it can determine the ripeness of tomatoes in real-time sorting. The gripper functions stably even after more than 10,000 repetitive test runs under harsh conditions of low temperatures or high humidity.
The newly developed multimodal tactile sensor can provide various tactile functions to the robotic gripper and is expected to be applied to automation lines in the fields of collaborative, humanoid, and service robots.
In addition to the tactile sensor, the research team plans to develop a technology that integrates temperature, humidity, inertial, and distance sensors into one platform, which may enable the development of an intelligent robotic hand capable of moving and functioning naturally like a human hand. Jung Eun-ju, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. Following the mass shooting in the city of Lewiston, Maine on Wednesday, which left at least 18 dead, American President Joe Biden released a statement urging lawmakers, especially Republican counterparts, to cooperate in passing bills for strengthening gun laws. While an intensive manhunt is still underway for the 40-year-old suspect Robert Card, Biden released a White House statement on Thursday emphasizing the urgent need for additional legislative action. Biden has been promoting gun safety policies through the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, as well as the establishment of the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. The president said, "This is the very least we owe every American who will now bear the scars, physical and mental, of this latest attack." Category 5 Hurricane Otis, which made landfall on Mexico's Pacific coast on Wednesday, has reportedly caused at least 27 deaths and left 4 people missing. The tourist city of Acapulco was particularly affected by the hurricane, which rapidly strengthened from a tropical storm to a powerful Category 5 hurricane in record time. The storm left Acapulco's municipal water system down and some 500,000 homes without power. Authorities have also raised concerns over a potential increase in the number of dead following extensive devastation. Mexico's President López Obrador visited Acapulco late Wednesday and said that restoring power and infrastructure was a top priority. Scientists are working towards an explanation as to why the hurricane was not foreseen. In Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, two of the world's best in heavyweight boxing and mixed martial arts, Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou, are set to face off under boxing rules on Saturday night. Tyson Fury, nicknamed the Gypsy King, is a 35-year-old WBC heavyweight champion born in Manchester, UK. His opponent Francis the Predator Ngannou, a 37-year-old former UFC heavyweight champion, has come a long way from working in a sand quarry in Cameroon as a 12-year-old to becoming one of the most renowned figures in mixed martial arts. In what's being called a dream matchup between boxing and UFC, the fighters are expected to touch gloves after a series of undercard bouts beginning 8 p.m. local time. More than 50 years after the British rock band from Liverpool, the Beatles, broke up, the band announced the release of what's being called their last song, titled Now and Then. Among the most iconic pop stars in the history of music, the Fab Four debuted in 1960 and released timeless global hits such as Hey Jude, Come Together, and Let It Be before the band broke up in 1970. Comprised of John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr, the band's only two surviving members, 81-year-old McCartney and 83-year-old Starr, worked with director Peter Jackson, who used AI to complete the recording. Now and Then will be released on Thursday, November 2nd. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Murky skies to start out the day, then the skies will get sunnier, but those in the east of Gangwon-do province are in for a drenching. Keep an umbrella handy through this afternoon with up to 60 millimeters in the forecast there, but the rest of the country could see 5 to 40 millimeters along with thunder and lightning. Unlike what was expected, temperatures were much warmer than normal this morning in most places. Then afternoon highs are a couple of notches lower than yesterday, but still higher than seasonal temperatures this afternoon. Seoul and Gwangju see highs of 19 degrees, Daegu topping out at 20 degrees Celsius under brighter skies in most places. Air quality has improved in central regions, but Gyeongsang-do provinces and surrounding areas are slightly higher than usual. Looking ahead to the weekend, ample sunshine is in the forecast nationwide, painting a perfect backdrop for autumn outings, but make sure to layer up. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
This weekend, there'll be major Halloween gatherings across Seoul. And after the tragic crowd crush in Itaewon a year ago, more people are expected in other places. Similar to when you squeeze a balloon to suppress the air, it doesn't disappear but only moves elsewhere. The so-called balloon effect is mainly expected in Myeongdong, Gangnam, and Hongdae, where alleyways are steep and narrow just like in Itaewon. And it gets very crowded near the main subway exits. In these areas of concern, 1,000 police officers will be dispatched from the weekend to next Tuesday. Meanwhile, CCTV cameras will be running to detect population density and send warnings to authorities when necessary. All of which is to prevent tragic incidents similar to one the country is still reeling from. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.